A Hollywood superstar walked into a homeless shelter, about to change lives forever. Keanu Reeves, renowned for blockbuster roles, entered a world far removed from Hollywood's glitz. His unexpected purpose there left everyone speechless. This isn't just another celebrity charity moment, it's a tale of genuine kindness that will make you rethink true generosity. As we delve into this heartwarming story, prepare to have your faith in humanity restored in ways you never imagined. The truth of what happened that day is more extraordinary than you could ever guess. The shelter buzzed with a symphony of voices and the aroma of warm food, offering a glimmer of hope amidst life's hardships. Little did the residents and staff know, their world was about to be turned upside down by an unexpected visitor. The creaky door swung open, and time seemed to stand still. All eyes turned to the entrance, where a figure stood silhouetted against the bright sunlight. As he stepped inside, whispers rippled through the crowd. Is that? No, it can't be. But it was. Keanu Reeves, Hollywood superstar, had just walked into their humble shelter. Keanu's appearance was a stark contrast to his red carpet image. He wore a simple black t-shirt, worn jeans, and scuffed boots. His long hair was slightly disheveled, and a scruffy beard adorned his face. He could have easily been mistaken for one of the shelter's residents, if not for the quiet confidence that surrounded him. The initial shock gave way to a mix of emotions. Residents stared wide-eyed, nudging their neighbors and pointing excitedly. The shelter staff were equally taken aback, frozen in disbelief at the sight of the unexpected celebrity in their midst. Keanu's body language spoke volumes. His shoulders were relaxed, his stance open and approachable. A gentle smile played on his lips as he surveyed the room, his eyes warm and kind. There was no hint of aloofness or superiority. Instead, he exuded a sense of humility and genuine interest in his surroundings. As Keanu made his way further into the shelter, questions raced through everyone's minds. What was he doing here? Was this some kind of publicity stunt? Would there be cameras following him? An elderly man muttered to his neighbor, "These celebrities, they don't really care about us." His companion shushed him, but the sentiment hung in the air, a reflection of the skepticism born from years of disappointment. A young mother clutched her child closer, her eyes never leaving Keanu. She dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, this unexpected visit could bring some positive change to their lives. Her little girl, oblivious to the significance of the moment, tugged at her sleeve, asking in a loud whisper, "Mommy, who's that man?" The shelter manager, recovering from his initial shock, straightened his posture and prepared to greet their famous visitor. He wondered if he should offer a tour, or if Keanu was here for some specific purpose. As he stepped forward, he noticed something peculiar about Keanu's demeanor. The actor wasn't looking around for cameras or assistants. He wasn't posing for photos or waving to fans. Instead, his gaze was fixed on the counter where meals were being served. With purposeful strides, Keanu approached the counter. The room held its collective breath, waiting to see what would happen next. He leaned in close to the still stunned woman behind the counter and spoke in a low, earnest voice. The residents strained to hear, curiosity burning in their eyes. As Keanu conversed with the staff, a subtle shift began to occur in the shelter's atmosphere. The initial tension started to dissipate, replaced by a growing sense of warmth and anticipation. Something extraordinary was unfolding before their eyes, something that would change the course of this ordinary day in ways they couldn't yet imagine. As Keanu approached the counter, a hush fell over the room. The residents leaned forward, straining to catch a glimpse of what was unfolding. Keanu's presence had stirred up emotions, and now, as he stood face to face with the shelter staff, the air crackled with anticipation. Keanu's body language spoke volumes. His shoulders were relaxed, his posture open and inviting. As he leaned in close to the staff member, his eyes were warm and focused, his expression one of genuine interest and concern. The staff member, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and worry lines, listened intently as Keanu spoke in hushed tones. Her eyes widened, and her hand flew to her mouth in surprise. She paused, taking a deep breath, and gave a subtle shake of her head, as if trying to process what she had just heard. Whispers rippled through the shelter. "What's he saying? Did you hear that? Is he really?" The residents exchanged glances, hope and skepticism battling in their eyes. For many, life had taught them to expect little and hope for even less. As Keanu stepped back, the staff member cleared her throat. Her voice, though soft, carried through the now silent room. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her words heavy with emotion, "Mr. Reeves has just done something incredible. He's paid for everyone's lunch today." For a moment, The silence deepened. Then, like a dam breaking, a wave of gasps, exclamations, and even tears swept through the room. People turned to their neighbors in disbelief, eyes shining with gratitude and awe. The atmosphere in the shelter shifted. The initial tension melted away, replaced by a sense of warmth and possibility. It was about being seen, being valued, being treated with dignity. As Keanu's gaze swept the room, he seemed to make eye contact with each person, acknowledging their presence, their humanity. For some, it had been years since they'd felt truly seen. The simple act of being recognized by someone the world deemed important was profoundly moving. One elderly man, his face weathered by years on the streets, felt tears prick his eyes. He'd been skeptical when Keanu first arrived, but now he found himself reevaluating his cynicism. Perhaps there was still goodness in the world, still people who cared about those society had forgotten. A young mother, clutching her toddler close, felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. She'd been praying for a sign that things could get better. Could this be it? The reminder that kindness still existed, that people could surprise you in the most beautiful ways? But Keanu wasn't done yet. He began to move among the tables, his body language open and inviting. It was clear he wasn't there for a quick photo op. Keanu Reeves was there to connect, to listen, to understand. His actions spoke louder than words. Here was a man who could be anywhere in the world, choosing to spend his time with those society often overlooks. It was about recognizing the inherent worth in every person in that room, about bridging the gap between worlds that rarely intersect. As Keanu approached the first table, pulling up a chair and leaning in with genuine interest, the residents realized they were about to experience something extraordinary. This was an opportunity to be heard, to share their stories, to be treated as equals by someone the world revered. The residents watched in awe as Keanu made his way to the serving line, tray in hand. His presence had already shaken things up, but now came the moment of truth. Would he retreat to a corner, or dare to bridge the gap between celebrity and those society often forgets? With gentle grace, Keanu approached a table where an elderly man sat alone. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, his voice warm and unassuming. The man, surprise etched across his face, nodded wordlessly. As Keanu settled in, the tension in the room began to shift. "I'm Keanu," he said, extending his hand. "What's your name?" "George," the man replied softly. "I've been here for 3 years now." Keanu's eyes filled with genuine interest. 3 years is a long time, George. Would you mind telling me about your journey?" As George began to speak, his initial hesitation melted away. Years of untold stories poured out. Tales of a life derailed by job loss, health issues, and unfortunate events. Keanu listened intently, offering words of encouragement. Slowly, the invisible barrier between Keanu and the shelter's residents crumbled. A young woman with a sleeping toddler approached. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, voice trembling, "but I just wanted to say thank you for the meal and for being here." Keanu's face lit up. "Please, join us. I'd love to hear your story, too." As she settled in, more residents gathered around. The initial trickle became a steady stream, each drawn by Keanu's genuine warmth. His fame faded into the background as he became just another person at the table, sharing a meal and conversation. A middle-aged man named David joined, hands shaking slightly. "I used to be an actor, too," he said quietly. "Nothing big, just community theater and commercials. But then..." Keanu leaned in, eyes locked on David's. "Then life took an unexpected turn?" David nodded, tears welling up. "I never thought I'd end up here. Sometimes I feel like I've lost everything that made me, me." The table fell silent, the weight of David's words hanging in the air. Then Keanu spoke, his voice filled with conviction. "David, being an actor isn't about fame or fortune. It's about connecting with others, telling stories that matter. And from what I can see, you haven't lost that ability at all. You're here, sharing your story, touching our hearts. That's what real acting is all about." The impact was immediate. David's shoulders straightened, a glimmer of long-lost pride returning to his eyes. Other residents nodded, offering support and encouragement. As conversations flowed, laughter began to echo through the shelter. Stories of hardship balanced with tales of resilience and hope. Keanu shared his own struggles, speaking openly about challenges in his life and career. His vulnerability created a safe space for others to open up, fostering a sense of equality and shared humanity. What began as a simple meal had transformed into a powerful moment of connection, reminding everyone present of the strength found in sharing our stories and truly seeing one another. As the laughter subsided, an elderly man at the edge of the group cleared his throat. His eyes, clouded with years of hardship, held a flicker of something more. The room fell silent, anticipation hanging in the air. What story was about to unfold, and how would it change the course of this extraordinary encounter? The man's name was Frank, and he'd been at the shelter for over 5 years. His weathered hands trembled slightly as he began to speak, his voice barely above a whisper. "I never thought I'd be sharing a table with a movie star," he chuckled softly. "But life has a way of surprising you, doesn't it?" Frank's story unfolded like a tapestry of tragedy and resilience. He'd once been a successful small business owner with a loving family and a beautiful home, but a series of unfortunate events, a devastating fire that destroyed his shop, followed by a bitter divorce and a battle with depression, had left him with nothing. "I lost everything," he said, his voice cracking. "My home, my family, my dignity. I never thought I'd end up here." Keanu leaned in, his eyes never leaving Frank's face. The actor's expression was a mix of compassion and deep attention, encouraging Frank to continue. As Frank spoke, others at the table began to open up as well. A young woman named Sarah, barely in her 20s, shared how she'd fled an abusive relationship with nothing but the clothes on her back and her infant son in her arms. David, the former actor, spoke of his struggles with addiction and the shame that had kept him from seeking help for so long. Their stories painted a vivid picture of the harsh realities of homelessness, the constant fear, the crushing loneliness, the daily struggle to maintain hope in the face of overwhelming odds. Throughout it all, Keanu listened intently, his face a mirror of their emotions. He didn't interrupt or offer platitudes. Instead, he simply nodded, occasionally reaching out to place a comforting hand on someone's shoulder. As the stories continued, Frank's demeanor began to change. The wilted flower of his spirit seemed to regain its color, nourished by the simple act of being heard. His shoulders straightened slightly, and a spark of determination flickered in his eyes. "You know," he said, his voice growing stronger, "sharing this with all of you, it's like I'm starting to remember who I used to be. Maybe it's not too late to become that person again." The group fell silent, absorbing the weight of Frank's words. In that moment, something remarkable began to happen. The invisible barriers that had separated them, celebrity and homeless, privileged and disadvantaged, seemed to melt away. They were just people, sharing their pain, their struggles, and their humanity. As the emotional weight of shared struggles settled over the group, something extraordinary happened. A single chuckle rippled through the air, heads turned, eyes widened in surprise. In a shelter where smiles were rare, what could have sparked such unexpected mirth? Keanu's eyes sparkled with mischief as he leaned in, his voice lowering conspiratorially. The others instinctively drew closer. "You know," Keanu began, a smile tugging at his lips, "I once had a fan ask me to sign their forehead with a permanent marker." He paused. Writing Keanu Reeves on someone's face without messing up? Not exactly a walk in the park. For a heartbeat, silence hung in the air. Then, like a dam breaking, laughter erupted from the table. This wasn't polite chuckling. It was genuine, belly-deep laughter that shook shoulders and brought tears to eyes. The kind that comes from recognizing life's absurdity, even in the darkest moments. As the laughter subsided, Keanu continued, sharing more humorous anecdotes from Hollywood. With each story, the mood lightened. Shoulders relaxed and faces softened, revealing glimpses of the people they were before life's hardships. The change didn't go unnoticed. Other residents looked over, curiosity replacing guarded expressions. Sensing the shift, Keanu raised his voice, inviting others to join. "Hey," he called out, "want to hear about the time I accidentally wore my John Wick costume grocery shopping?" Like a wave of happiness, the laughter spread. Soon, other residents were sharing their own stories, tales of everyday mishaps that had punctuated their difficult journeys. A woman recounted mistaking shoe polish for hair dye, while a man described his ill-fated lockdown haircut attempt. As stories flowed, something remarkable happened. Invisible barriers crumbled. People who had barely spoken in months were now swapping jokes. The air, once heavy with despair, vibrated with newfound energy. The shelter staff watched in amazement. They'd seen countless celebrities pass through, but never witnessed a transformation like this. The usual tension had dissipated, replaced by camaraderie and shared humanity. Carol, a longtime volunteer, felt tears prick her eyes. In over a decade, she'd never heard so much laughter here. It was as if Keanu had unlocked a forgotten part of these people, the part that could still find joy, still connect, still hope. As laughter rippled through the room, its impact was evident. People who had entered with hunched shoulders now stood straighter, their gazes meeting others. Smiles, once rare, now adorned faces young and old. In that moment, it was clear Keanu's visit had accomplished something profound. He had reminded everyone of laughter's power to heal, connect, and restore dignity. As the laughter subsided, a hush fell over the room. Keanu's eyes, still twinkling with mirth, took on a more intense gaze. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. The residents of the shelter leaned in, their faces a mix of curiosity and anticipation. Keanu's gaze swept across the faces around him, each one etched with its own story of struggle and resilience. He took a deep breath, and when he spoke, his words carried the weight of someone who had faced his own battles and emerged stronger. "You know," he began, "life can be incredibly tough. There are days when it feels like the world is against us, when we can't catch a break. But I want you to remember something important. Your worth isn't determined by your circumstances." The room fell silent, every ear straining to catch his words. A young woman with tired eyes blinked rapidly, as if trying to hold back tears. Keanu continued, his voice gentle yet firm. "Each one of you has a unique story, a strength that's all your own. It might be hidden right now, buried under layers of pain and disappointment, but it's there, and it's waiting for you to rediscover it." An older man in the corner nodded slowly, his weathered face softening as he absorbed Keanu's words. "Life isn't about avoiding the storms," Keanu said, his eyes moving from person to person. "It's about learning to dance in the rain. It's about finding moments of joy, even in the darkest times." Keanu paused, allowing his words to sink in. Then he leaned in even closer, his voice dropping to an almost conspiratorial whisper. "Can I tell you a secret?" he asked, a small smile playing on his lips. The room tensed with anticipation, all eyes fixed on him. The most incredible comebacks often start in moments just like this. When everything seems lost, that's when the stage is set for something amazing to happen. A ripple of energy passed through the room. Backs straightened ever so slightly, chins lifted a fraction higher. Keanu's words seemed to physically transform the people around him. "Remember," he continued, his voice gaining strength, "your past doesn't define your future. Every day is a new chance to rewrite your story." A young man in the back, who had been silent throughout the visit, suddenly spoke up. "But how?" he asked, his voice cracking with emotion. "How do we even begin when everything feels so hopeless?" Keanu turned to him, his eyes filled with understanding. "One step at a time," he said softly. "Start with today. Find one small thing you can do to move forward. Maybe it's asking for help, maybe it's helping someone else. But take that step, no matter how small it seems. And then tomorrow, take another." As Keanu's words settled over the room, faces began to change. Eyes that had been dull with hopelessness now sparked with a renewed sense of possibility. Shoulders that had been hunched under the weight of their burdens began to straighten. It was as if a collective breath was being released, years of pent-up despair giving way to the first tentative seeds of hope. As the shelter buzzed with renewed energy, the door swung open, revealing a man in a crisp business suit. His eyes scanned the room, settling on Keanu with a mix of surprise and determination. The unexpected visitor's arrival caused a stir among the shelter staff, who exchanged curious glances. The man strode purposefully towards Keanu, his polished shoes echoing against the linoleum floor. As he approached, the actor stood, extending a hand in greeting. Michael Thompson, owner of a local tech startup, introduced himself, explaining that he had heard about Keanu's visit through the grapevine. "Mr. Reeves," Michael began, his voice filled with purpose, "your presence here today has sparked something in our community. I have a proposition that could change everything." Keanu listened intently as Michael outlined his idea. Inspired by Keanu's act of kindness, he saw an opportunity to make a real difference. "I want to offer job opportunities to some of the residents here," Michael explained, his eyes shining with excitement. "Entry-level positions, with training provided, a chance for people to get back on their feet." The shelter fell silent as the weight of Michael's words sank in. Carol, the longtime volunteer, stepped forward, her voice trembling with emotion. "This could be life-changing for so many here, but how can we ensure it's sustainable?" Michael squared his shoulders. "I'll commit to a minimum of 5 positions now, with the goal of expanding the program over the next year, and I'll reach out to other local businesses to join in. We can create a network of support. As the conversation unfolded, the residents gathered around, their faces a mix of hope and cautious optimism. Sarah, the young mother who had earlier shared her story with Keanu, stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper. Does this mean we might have a real chance? Keanu placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. It's more than a chance, Sarah, it's a beginning. The actor then addressed the room. This is what community is all about. It's about inspiring others to join in, creating a ripple effect of kindness and opportunity. As if on cue, the shelter's phone began to ring. Carol answered, her eyes widening as she listened. It's the owner of the bakery down the street. They want to know how they can help too. The atmosphere in the shelter shifted. Where there had been laughter and camaraderie before, now there was a palpable sense of possibility. Residents gathered in small groups, discussing potential opportunities and sharing words of encouragement. Frank, the former business owner who had lost everything, approached Michael with a tentative smile. I used to run my own shop. I know a thing or two about business. Maybe I could help with training new employees? Michael's face lit up. That's exactly the kind of experience we need. Let's talk more about that. As the two men began to discuss possibilities, Keanu watched from the sidelines, a small smile playing on his lips. He caught David's eye, the former actor who had earlier shared his struggles with addiction and shame. Remember what I said about connecting with others and telling meaningful stories? Keanu asked. David nodded, his eyes bright with unshed tears. This is your chance to rewrite your story, to use your experiences to help others. David straightened his shoulders, a look of determination replacing the shame that had haunted his features. I'm ready, he said simply. As word spread about the developing opportunities, more community members began to arrive at the shelter. Each new arrival brought with them a spark of hope, a chance for change. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the shelter's walls, a palpable sense of transformation hung in the air. The once quiet halls now buzzed with energy that hadn't been felt in years. Laughter echoed through corridors that had known only hushed whispers and muffled sobs. The change was visible in straightened postures, lifted chins, and eyes that now met each other with warmth instead of averted gazes. Keanu's impending departure loomed large, and a bittersweet realization began to set in. How would they carry this newfound momentum forward without their unexpected guardian angel? The question lingered unspoken on everyone's lips, a mixture of hope and anxiety swirling in their hearts. Yet even as they grappled with these emotions, something remarkable was happening. Residents who had barely spoken to each other for months were now engaged in animated conversations. They shared stories, swapped jokes, and exchanged contact information. The barriers of shame, fear, and isolation that had once divided them were dissolving before their very eyes. In one corner, a group huddled around a table, drafting plans for a community garden. We could grow our own vegetables, one man exclaimed, his eyes shining with excitement. Maybe even sell some at the local farmer's market. Nearby, two women discussed starting a support group for survivors of domestic violence, their voices ringing with newfound determination. The shelter staff watched in amazement as ideas and initiatives blossomed throughout the room. A young man who had been silently battling addiction approached Carol, the longtime volunteer. I think I'm ready, he said softly. Ready for what? Carol asked. Ready to get help, he replied, his voice steadier than it had been in months. As the evening wore on, the atmosphere in the shelter continued to evolve. People who had entered that morning with hunched shoulders and downcast eyes now stood tall, their faces alight with renewed hope and dignity. One resident, Lisa, summed up the collective feeling. This is the first time I've felt like a person again. Not a statistic, not a problem to be solved, but a human being with value and potential. Her words resonated deeply with those around her. It was as if a collective realization had dawned, revealing the inherent worth that had always been there, hidden beneath layers of hardship and societal judgment. As Keanu prepared to say his goodbyes, the impact of his visit became crystal clear. It wasn't about the free meal or the chance to meet a celebrity. It was about the ripple effect of kindness, the power of genuine human connection, and the transformative nature of being truly seen and heard. One by one, residents approached Keanu to express their gratitude. They shared their newly formed plans, their rekindled dreams, and their commitments to pay forward the kindness they had experienced. A young man who had been silently observing finally found his voice. "Mr. Reeves," he said, his words barely above a whisper, "I've been here for 3 years, and I had given up. But today, you reminded me that I'm still alive, that I still have something to offer." Keanu's eyes softened as he listened, his hand resting gently on the young man's shoulder. "You don't need to thank me," he replied. "Just promise me you'll keep that spark alive. Your story isn't over yet. It's just beginning a new chapter." As the sun set on that extraordinary day, the shelter buzzed with newfound energy. Keanu's kindness had ignited a flame, spreading through the community. In the days that followed, volunteers flooded in, inspired by his example. Local businesses offered opportunities, and residents supported each other in unprecedented ways. The true transformation lay in the small, everyday moments. A shy smile, a helping hand, laughter echoing through once silent halls. These were the seeds of change, planted by one man's compassion and nurtured by a community ready to bloom. What small act of kindness could you perform today? Remember, every gesture has the power to change a life forever.